Hello and welcome to Glasstire's Top 5. This is for the week of December 31st, New Year's Eve 2020. Be gone, get away,
God.
get out of here. My name is Christopher Blay.
I am Christina Rees. Welcome everyone to this is our last top five of the year. This shitty year we're getting rid of. So what we're doing this week is this morning we're recording this on a Wednesday, even though these go out on Thursdays. We always record ahead of time, obviously. This morning we published the top 10 or most read stories on Glasstire for 2020. And this was a combination of news articles and features and reviews, etc., that as I went through them chronologically and listed them, and also I chose 15 instead of 10 because I just wanted people to see kind of how well rounded the coverage was that we gave this crazy year. You and I are just going to go through and highlight maybe three each that we would like to talk about today for whatever reason. And we're going to do it chronologically like the published list is.
With that, we will dive directly into the chronologically speaking. The first story of note was the Ronald Llewellyn Jones announcement that he was exiting the Zocalo artist residency. It's a residency that debuted in January or late December of 2019, early 2020. Yeah, Ronald went on to talk about, and Ronald's a Houston artist, and he went on to talk about his past criminal record and how he uh, didn't get a background check until after he was accepted into the residency and was literally in the office signing the papers to welcome him to the residency when they were like, oh, we did a background check and you didn't qualify. And
Right.
that was a really, I think that the reason that that resonated with so many people was it's part of the story of criminal justice reform in America when people that have served time for whatever crimes they committed can't reintegrate into society successfully. There's
Right.
so many barriers, and this was one of the circumstances, and it was unfortunate, and it was the reason I think that story resonated.
Next on our list, and we're not putting these in order, they are in chronological order, and I wasn't going to pick this one except for this morning when we published this list. I went through every single one of them, of course, to kind of pick up language from each to put descriptors in. And I started reading this post that you had started to build on March 11th, and it was the
Yes,
beginning of Corona. And I remember that week so well. When I was reading this piece again this morning at about 7:30 in the morning, I very unexpectedly burst into tears because I was looking at all of these images of all of our beloved Texas museums and institutions and nonprofits that were just like dominoes, just down, 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 down,
yeah,
down. There was so much grief for us in that post, I think, a collective grief in that post. And for me, it was very eerie. It was very frightening. And all this that we had taken for granted was suddenly just being yanked out from under us. And the feeling for me of reading that post and then rereading it this morning after all these months and knowing everything that's happened since and all the people who have died since and just the human cost of this pandemic was real similar to me of watching the Twin Towers fall. It was that
yeah.
same sort of like it was a caving in of physicality.
Writing that story, I couldn't keep up with the closings, and I couldn't keep up with how many people were being affected in real time, and it's still happening. We're still losing people to COVID. Cases are still getting crazy, and all these institutions and these artists are still being affected in just immeasurable ways.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm asking anyone to revisit that news item or if I'm just saying that that was the beginning of it for us, for Glasstire, for Texas, and it continues. I mean, just 10 minutes ago, I got an alert on my phone from the city of Houston, from Harris County, talking about the COVID numbers being absolutely out of control and to not celebrate New Year's Eve with people.
Yeah, the other story is one that it was an interview that I did with artist Lauren Woods, and it was Art in the Public Sphere. Appeared on June 2nd of this year. I was talking with Lauren was in that interview about the Tony Tassett sculpture in Dallas called the Eye, and it was, shall we say, reclaimed by the public with the inscription, "Now you see us," and it was a response to the killing of George Floyd and all the protests that we witnessed throughout the summer. It was crazy to me to learn that there were upwards of 15 million people across the country protesting at any one time over the summer. So it was something that was right in the middle of it. It was when that we talked about how artists need to respond, or how artists can't live in a vacuum in a moment like that, or in that particular moment, and the frustration of trying to think about anything art related when so many people, so many Black people are being killed by police, and so many cops are getting away with it, literally, that we felt that as artists, it was something that was on the mind of every artist that we knew, and something that we felt a strong connection to. When there was scribblings on other walls in museum spaces across the country. So yeah, that was something that was just kind of like one of many stories, but it just felt very felt very personal. Couple of days after the conversation was published with Lauren, I got news that a very well-known and well-loved Fort Worth artist, Jeremy Joel, had passed away. And it was one of those, he was
I think he was 37.
uh,
Yeah, he was 37.
37, yeah. Yeah, just, uh, and it's someone that I knew personally, not as well as his other friends did, but certainly someone that I had had conversations with over the years. And it was just such a shock to the system with everything else happening in the world. So yeah, it was maybe a little difficult to write that obituary, but I certainly had enough people to share stories with me about who he was and the way he affected their lives.
Yeah.
And his work was just sort of like underground. He wasn't really a part of until later in a couple of years before he passed, was more associated with some Fort Worth galleries. But before then, he was essentially just an artist doing his thing, murals, street art, that sort of thing. And it was a shock, to say the least.
Next on our list is an essay by the Houston-based artist Emily Peacock. It was called "That Wasn't the Whole Story," and we published that on July 6th. In April of 2020, she had given us an essay about how she can't stop making artwork, and which is true of so many artists. And artists this year haven't stopped making art, as we know, as we've been witness to this entire year. But she never did stop making work. But by July 6th, she wanted to make some corrections to that earlier, slightly sunnier assessment of her home life during COVID. She wrote another essay for us talking about her depression and admitting herself to a psych ward for a week, and it's a very warm and intimate and very honest essay. And I think a lot of people, and I think by this time, the idea that there's a human toll beyond people getting sick and dying from COVID, mothers, working mothers of young children were hit very, very hard by this pandemic. And she's no exception.
Yeah.
She's a college professor at Sam Houston State, as well as being an artist. And so I do recommend that you go back and read that if you have not read that one, for our audience, because I think it holds up and I think it's important. And I think it was a good kind of marker of a certain point in the pandemic and that kind of early to mid part of the shutdown when we were really starting to look at a different way that the human toll was unfolding.
Yeah. And I mean, we're all subject to this kind of intense isolation. Even if we're isolating with other people, it still feels like a strong disconnection. And it's easy to understand how that kind of isolation and that kind of collective grief can just totally fuck with people, and it's hopefully we're close to the end.
The last one that I wanted to talk about today was a news item that you wrote. It got a huge traffic, by the way. It's called Aurora Dallas announces Area 3 drive-in art experience. Now, this is Aurora Dallas, which is a light and art biennial organized by Dallas organizers. This is not Aurora Picture Show in Houston, by the way. And they do a biennial, and we've reviewed it before. Colette Copeland, an artist and contributor who's based in Dallas, has reviewed it for us before. But anyway, this was kind of, for me, a reason to include that today was that, you know, one of the most extraordinary things that we witnessed and covered over the course of this year is how artists and organizers managed to still get art in front of people in these innovative ways. And there was still art being made, and there were still people who were desperate to see art. And I think by the time we published that particular news item, which was in, let me look, I think it was in September, people were they were starving for things that they could go do that wouldn't put them in danger, and ways to see art. And the Aurora organizers and the artists, all these North Texas artists who participated, I think, as far as I can tell, they did a great job. We also ran a review of it by Colette just a few weeks ago, actually. She went to it. She took lots of pictures. As far as I know, it's a very successful event. You drive through a parking garage, and there are art installations throughout it, dotted throughout. You stay in your car the whole time. It's truly a drive-through parking garage art installation immersive event. And in fact, and one of the other reasons I wanted to put it up is because it's still open, and you have one more day to go see it. You have through Friday to see it. But anyway, everyone did innovative, interesting, and ingenious things to get their art in front of people, in person and online. We got real used to it. But this was a really pretty good kind of marquee event that people could actually attend. And this is happening all over the US, all over the world. People just put their thinking hats on and came up with really interesting and good ways for us to continue to see art that was being made. A lot of it being made for the here and now too, you know, very timely art. And I love this. I love this initiative. I love what Texas artists and institutions and organizations did.
Yeah, they innovated. They came up with ways of, turning lemons into lemonade, and we're still here. So
hopefully next year will be very, very different in better ways rather than worse ways. And we're still here. We're not going anywhere.
No, and we look forward as best as we can, sometime before the year turns again, that we will see everyone in their spaces.
We'll never take it for
granted. And we'll be in person. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.